We all know very well that it would be better for us to consume less sugar, consume less junk food, yet many of us continue to eat sweets, even though we want to be healthier. So how can we finally make sure that we consume less sweets and less junk food? And today we'll be talking about 5 tips that will help us do that. And the first tip would be that with any bad habit really, you want to make sure that you increase the friction between your intention and your action. So basically just making it more difficult for you to actually get to those sweets or get to that junk food. So for example, what you could do with sweets is put them somewhere where it's very high and it's difficult for you to reach it. And every time you feel that urge of eating something sweet, you would have to then get a chair to actually be able to reach where you've put your sweets. So basically using our laziness to our advantage, because if we have to go through that whole procedure, we might think, okay, I don't necessarily want the sweetie that much. Or the best way, if you can do that, and if you want to do that, would be, of course, to not buy sweeties or junk food in the first place. So that when you feel the urge to eat something unhealthy, you can't, except if, for example, you would be willing to make the effort of going shopping, especially just to buy sweeties. But I think by the time you've actually reached your car, you will think, no, I can't be bothered anyway. And then the second tip would be to use what Nia Eyal calls the 10-minute rule. And basically what this is good against is that when we say that we're never going to do something, like we're never going to have sweets again or we're never going to eat junk food again, that actually just leads us to want to eat sweets or junk food even more. No matter who tells us that we are not allowed to do something or that we can't do something, even if that is ourselves telling ourselves that we ought to delay gratification, we are very likely to want to rebel against that authority. And what the 10-minute rule basically does is that it doesn't say that you can't have that sweetie or have that junk food that you really want, but it's basically just saying that you can have it, but wait for 10 minutes. And this is really great because it usually takes 10 minutes for the urge to fade away. So this leads to us being able to resist without trying to willpower our way through and push through the pain of saying that we can't have that, because whatever we resist persists. Instead, we're just managing to not have it because by that time we don't feel like doing so anyway. Viktor Frankl once said that there's a gap between stimulus and response, and that gap is called freedom. And I think this is why this 10-minute rule works so well. It's because it gives us this gap between stimulus and response and therefore gives us kind of more free will. And that would then lead me to the third tip, that you want to make sure that you don't tell yourself that you have to resist 100% of the time. To not have this all or nothing mentality, because this all or nothing mentality is why diets don't work. It's because we tell ourselves that we're not going to have any biscuits, and then we have that one biscuit, and because we feel like we've broken our diet anyway, so we might as well go on because we failed anyway. And of course that doesn't make any sense, but that's how we tend to think. And then we end up eating all the rest of the biscuits as well. And then the fourth tip would be to be more kind to ourselves, because when it comes to motivation, especially discipline, we think that we need to be really, really harsh with ourselves to be able to be as disciplined as possible. However, as you'll see in one study that I'm going to go into very soon, you will see that this isn't necessarily the case, that when we are very cruel to ourselves, we're more disciplined. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So in this study, it was basically a study on women who all were on a diet. And these women were told to taste a donut by the researchers. And then these women were split into 3 different groups. So one was a control group. This group probably beat themselves up because that's what we usually tend to do when we, for example, break our diets. Then another group, and this was the self-esteem group, was told to just write 10 things that they like about themselves. And then the third group was the self-compassion group, which were told to see, yes, it wasn't necessarily too good that they broke their diet, but as long as they don't do so in future anymore, everything's okay. You can be compassionate to yourself. It happens. What's very interesting about this study is that after these 3 groups were told to do that, they were put into 3 different rooms. All of these rooms had lots of M&Ms. The researchers just told them that this also was part of the study, that they wanted them to taste M&Ms and they didn't tell them the real reason behind it. But what they actually did is that after the groups left, they measured how many M&Ms each group ate. And what was very interesting is that the self-compassion group was the group that ate the least sweets after that. And the self-esteem and control group, the self-esteem group didn't really have an advantage. So basically all these affirmations about telling yourself in front of the mirror how great you are doesn't really work. Now, knowing how we can eat less junk food is great for our health, but if we really want to be healthy, then we also want to make sure that we eat more vegetables and eat more things that are good for us. So if you want to know how you can get yourself to eat more vegetables and so forth, you can watch this video here.